Given the challenges, there's a clear need to support teaching staff in EMI contexts, for both those teaching in their second language and those working outside of their home contexts. Well-designed staff training has been reported to be instrumental in determining the success of an EMI programme. Yet to date, few pedagogical guidelines for effective EMI teaching and learning have been suggested. If we are to speak of an EMI communicative competence then, as noted, we're not just talking about expertise in the subject, as well as the ability to speak or teach in English, but awareness of the background of international students, their different academic cultures, as well as the ability to manage the internationalised classroom and diverse cohorts, which may also include students with varying levels of English proficiency. EMI instructors, both native and non-native English speakers, are encouraged to become familiar with different teaching techniques and strategies, as well as the background of their students via needs analysis. A learner-centred approach is often promoted in EMI settings. It may well be the most familiar approach for some students, international students coming to Japan, for example. It may also be the favoured approach if the goal is a language learning objective. But it's certainly not the only approach that should be used in an EMI setting. The point I want to make is that transitioning to teach through the medium of English does not necessarily have to mean abandoning your current teaching practice and adopting a Western approach. It means being open to adapting your teaching style to accommodate the backgrounds of your learners, having a flexible approach to teaching. Some students may, for example, be more familiar with instructors encouraging active student participation by asking them different types of questions, utilising group work and discussion activities, for example. On the other hand, some students may be unfamiliar with this approach and therefore reluctant to answer questions. The approach to teaching also clearly depends upon the subject you're teaching. In essence, needs analysis is crucial. As in all teaching contexts, EMI does, however, require that you're able to command the class, speak in a loud voice, monitor students' comprehension by observing them and using gestures, eye contact, clarify things where possible. There's no one-size-fits-all approach to EMI, however, no one approach to teaching via the medium of English, and students and teachers are advised to be open to a flexible approach to working or operating in EMI settings. Some instructors may be concerned with a possible westernisation of their own education system, as well as the possible detrimental effect the spread of English may have on their own language. Indeed, universities in Denmark, Finland, Norway and Sweden, for example, have adopted measures to protect the Nordic languages in academia due to the growing presence of English. In Japan, Tsuneyoshi found that internationalization, most notably Americanization, has resulted in conventional Japanese-style courses being pressured into meeting so-called international standards. Japanese students felt that American-type lectures did not fit their needs. Others raised concerns about teaching Japanese-specific subject matter in English. Differences in Western-centric practices and local academic practices were also of concern, and they feared the loss of a Japanese way of teaching or learning, and that students would regard Western-centred practices and those who could teach in English as superior. John and Kim's comparative study of universities in Japan and Korea found that Korean students were positive overall and were also satisfied with their EMI courses. Stakeholders in both countries were critical of EMI strategies, expressing concerns over domestic students' struggles with English, understanding the subject matter and Western styles of education. And students expressed concerns over the impact on the Korean language. Faculty in both countries also reported facing cultural dilemmas using English, and there were issues relating to international students, including quality and visa overstays, for example. There's a clear need to examine how EMI is being implemented around the globe, but also the attitudes of key stakeholders towards this policy, as well as both the impact of EMI and the types of training needed. EMI clearly presents a number of challenges for instructors and also raises critical questions about key skills and qualifications required, as well as how to define competency in EMI instruction and competency in the English language. Despite such challenges and issues to be considered, however, there remains a scarcity of both resources for teaching subject matter in such courses, as well as research on this topic and teacher training and support. The notion of English proficiency has been given a lot of attention in the literature, and given the internationalised context of the EMI setting, where the dominant use of English is as a global lingua franca, it is essential that we move away from this notion of a native English speaker competence, which is not only an idealised construct, but also an irrelevant yardstick of competence for this context. Instead, it is important to focus on the ability to present, define concepts and give examples, and the ability to conduct a class in English. Ultimately, an EMI instructor has to have the ability to conduct a class in English and convey information, as well as have the ability to work in an internationalised classroom with students from diverse linguistic and cultural backgrounds and students with varying levels of English proficiency. So that concludes Lecture 6, looking at EMI from the perspectives of teachers. In Lecture 7, we'll move on to look at EMI from the perspective of another group of key stakeholders, the students. Thank you.